Hello everybody, Danielle at D's Enlightened Edits here. I am going live today with a very special guest, and as you may have seen in my stories, we're going to be talking about Saturn and healing your relationship with Saturn, as well as Saturn retrograde and a whole bunch of other cool things. So I will give you a few moments as you guys funnel in and as we wait for our guest today. There she is, the lovely Avery. So I am just waiting for her request, and then I will invite her on, and we're going to have a great chat today about Saturn. As I said, we're going to be talking about healing your relationship with Saturn and a whole bunch of the planets that are in retrograde. So it's going to be a great time, and Avery is very good people. So just a second while I add her in. There we go.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello.
How you doing? You look beautiful in green.
Oh, thank you. I'm doing so good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited about today. I was giving a little bit of an intro so that people who join us on the replay as well. Hi, cutie. Who's that?
This is Thor.
Hi, Thor.
You're Thor. Oh, yeah. He wants to be part of it.
There you go. We have some Thor channeling energy. We're going to be talking about divine masculine because of Saturn today, but we're also going to throw in some divine feminine with Venus retrograde that's really going on heavily right now.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, so as people will come in, let's say a little bit about yourself. How would you like to introduce yourself? I know Avery as a very talented witch and psychic practitioner, I would say, passionate about potions and tarot and astrology. So I'm really excited. After you watch today's live, go and check out Avery's stories because there's a lot more information about Saturn in her stories from past posts. But how would you introduce yourself and your gifts?
Yeah, so I definitely identify as a witch. I feel like that's like a reclamation for me, in this lifetime. I am very passionate about studying tarot and astrology. I am clairsentient, clairaudient, and yeah, I mean, I'm also a chef. I'm an artist. I'm a little bit of everything, you know?
That's right. Avery has a really cool logo. It might be changing up, but as of now, it's the beautiful Ka symbol from ancient Egypt. And if you follow me, you know how passionate I am about ancient Egypt. So we connected over that and over some starseed things. She actually gave me some readings on some of her lives back in the day. So she's really talented. Go and check out at Cosmos and Company. It will be linked in the replay anywhere that this is replayed and reposting, because she has awesome things and awesome offerings and potions and readings maybe coming again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I am working on relaunching my website. I am working on deciding what kind of offerings I want to give. And I do want to incorporate some of my chef background as well. So that's kind of the transition that I'm in. So after COVID, I almost bought into the restaurant that I was working in. I was really heavily in the service industry. And in March of 2020, almost became a partner in the restaurant that I was working at. And honestly, luckily, it saved me from that because that wasn't the truest expression of what I came here to do. I'm a great, talented chef, but I wasn't living in the spiritual side of myself as much. That was more reserved for my home self, but that just wasn't the right thing, you know? So I am working on how to incorporate that into my spiritual practice. And one of the biggest lessons actually that I've had from Saturn is going back to more of an ancestral way of eating and finding recipes and rediscovering more ancient methods, you know, like sourdough and pickling. And I'm a little bit more animal based now too. So I want to share that.
That's awesome. And food is and can be medicine, and it can be so much a part of witchcraft and herbs and all wonderful things. So having the knowledge coming from kind of both ends of the spectrum is going to be really powerful for nutrition and magical properties' sake.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Yeah. So that's awesome. And as you said, it's one of the things that Saturn taught you and kind of almost saved you from. For me, that's something that took a while to learn. And I think for most people, it takes a while to learn that some of the things that we go after or put our heart and soul into that don't work out is really a teaching mechanism to say, does your heart and soul really fit in there, or are you trying to make it fit instead of taking what lessons or karma you need from that area of your life and carrying it forward to another area where you have more expertise or passion or ability? And that's something that it's not to say that it can't be heartbreaking, because it certainly can. It can be heartbreaking to release certain aspects or parts of your life. Karma can happen and be released or healed or overcome in positive ways or in really heavy, dense ways. It really depends on what it is for you and how many times you've had to go over that lesson and how comfortable you are with that area of your life being transformed, because Saturn is a transformer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not sure what your Saturn return house was, but mine was in the 8th house.
Okay.
So it was deeply transformative, and it invited me. Now that I'm through it, I can look back and kind of gather the information. I think that anyone going through Saturn return, I invite you to just experience what you experience. You don't need to assign meaning beforehand, and you don't need to throw a lot of expectation into it, because I don't think that's the purpose of it. I think the purpose is the experience, and then you can look back and say, okay, this is what I gathered from my experience. So now that I'm out of it, I can look back and say, wow, okay, so my life before my Saturn return was not aligned with what I'm supposed to be doing. That wasn't what my soul was called to do. So having the 8th house Saturn return, it asked me to let my old life die and be reborn. It really did. It was like, you can't build a castle on sand. It's just not going to happen. So you need to let everything that you were going for go to invite in the more beautiful and true life that you can have.
Yeah, and it's not to say necessarily that it was misaligned in my perspective. It's more so that we maybe needed to go in certain directions to pick up little fractals and little pieces. But sometimes we assign more meaning and more attachment to things than there necessarily needs to be for where our soul is headed overall. Because I think sometimes people hearing that and feeling the weight of Saturn, that, oh, if you're misaligned, if there are things that, can't be built in that direction, it's almost like, depending on your worthiness level, you can feel like, I did something wrong. Where was my intuition? I wasn't headed in the right direction. Was it not working? How do I have faith in it now if it didn't get me in the right place then? I would say it is always leading you in the direction. It's just sometimes we misconstrue the meanings and overly attach meaning to certain things for ourselves. And so I know we both have a lot of spiritual people that follow us, and there's this weird sort of juxtaposition between intuition for yourself and intuition for someone else that you are helping. And I always love to point that out, because even if you feel imposter syndrome or self-worth issues or difficulties figuring out or divining your own path, it's not to say that you're not a very talented psychic or witch or medium or however you identify. It's just to say that sometimes from within your own perspective and the weight of your own experience, it can be difficult to divine for yourself the way you can for someone else from that outside perspective without the weight of emotion on you. Because even if you're very empathic and pick up on the emotions of a situation that you're reading for or healing or coaching or helping with, you're never going to feel it as strongly as if you were in the depths of that matrix of experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my favorite not definitions, but ideas of thought about Saturn and karma and dharma is that karma is what keeps us in line towards our dharma. It's the bumper lanes, essentially, that keep us on the path. So when we get too far off, we hit and we're like, oh no, gotta go back down. And I think sometimes it does get a little bit more and more severe the further away we get. So I think that's maybe sometimes when people can feel the intense aspects of Saturn, but really it's a loving force that's keeping you on the right path.
Yeah. And so let's backtrack a little bit in case someone doesn't know what a Saturn return is, like we were both speaking about. How would you define a Saturn return?
I would define it as a coming of age, honestly. I think that in the cultures that we live in now, there's very little coming of age rites and rituals, I would say, other than, like bat mitzvah in the Jewish tradition. So for me, and I think in the modern world that we're living in, it's very important to break from the identity in the world and the culture that we grew up in into our own selves as adults. So that's what I would define Saturn as. I would define it as a coming of age ritual, honestly, and an integration of everything that you've learned and then everything that you will become, I guess.
Yeah. And you know what also was coming through to me as you were speaking was a lot of people see Saturn returns as kind of the closing of doors, like the death, as you were saying, on an old life. But it does also show as an opening, as an opening to the next phase and to that phase where we have the choice to go more towards our dharma rather than our karma, because Saturn, if people don't know, is the ruler of time and karma. And so while we are in this experience where time operates for society, I would say, in more of a linear fashion, even though as multidimensional souls and, spiritual people, we kind of operate outside of that to a degree. When we are going through a life where certain aspects hit in certain time periods on a natal chart, within 27, I know you say 27 to 30. I like to stretch it a little bit, 27 to, I would say, 32 years, depending on the person and their life experience for Saturn returns. And I love to remind people that, so we both kind of just came out of our first Saturn returns within the past little while here, but Saturn returns can happen usually up to 2 to 3 times in a lifetime based on that chunk of time from 27 to 32-ish years, depending on how you choose to live your life and how you choose to get old or not in this body in this lifetime. It can hit again in someone's late 50s, early 60s, and then if they live to be in their 90s, it can happen again.
Yeah.
So there's so many times in life where we have that kind of crossroads to see where we want to clear karma and go more towards dharma. And Saturn helps in that. Saturn can be a hard teacher because Saturn is also about discipline and how devoted and dedicated someone is and how willing you are to go in the depths. Saturn is very associated with black and darkness, and that can be scary to some people because darkness can be perceived as evil. But darkness is not always evil, although there are some darker energies and entities that can associate in the Saturn realms. Darkness can also be associated with the divine feminine yin energy. And for me, what helped me release so much fear about Saturn and heal more of my relationship with Saturn was really working with the divine feminine element as well in terms of Saturn's wife, Opis or Rhea or Opis, depending on what pantheon you're working in and which name you resonate with. It's all the same being. I actually have a photo of her here.
Love it.
Yeah, and she has her lions and her scepter and her keys.
I love it.
Yeah, so she's fabulous. I have an older live and a YouTube video about her and all of her energy, and I'm very connected with the Leonine deities and energies, so she really helped me. So I would say if you are someone who is not so easy with the energy of Saturn or feel a lot of father wound that comes up for you because of Saturn operating as the daddy, right? Then maybe go towards the motherly aspect of as well and research her and see about working with them together as a unit instead of that individual male authority figure of Saturn on its own.
That's really good advice. Yeah, I definitely don't love authority. Don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm Venus ruled. Venus is conjunct my rising. So Venus was rising in my chart when I was born. And I very, very, very much feel that and agree with that. I'm just trying to be lounging on a beach. Okay, I'm trying to live my best Greek fantasy. That's the vibe that I want to cultivate in my life. So Saturn for me was definitely like a mean daddy. I was like, no, thank you, with coming in here with all that authority. Um, but I think working with the energy and also working with the feminine energy helps integrate if you have resistance to it.
Yeah. And actually, in one of your posts that you shared about Saturn, you shared one of the mantras, the Hindu mantras to Saturn. Saturn does appear under a different name, Sani, in Hindu tradition. And in that tradition as well, there are alternative protectors for people who work with Saturn. So a lot of people of the Hindu tradition will wear black on Saturdays in sort of a protection element for Saturn not being on Saturn's negative side. A lot of people will also do mantras to Lord Hanuman for protection from negative aspects of karma or an easier time clearing karma from Saturn. Yeah, so you can go and check out that. It's too long for us to write out in the comments here, but go and check out Avery's post about that beautiful mantra. That can really help because I find that mantras or mudras, if you're more comfortable with doing something physical, mudras would be making hand gestures and symbols that help you navigate the energy and spread it through different parts of your body and different parts of your energetic field. You can work with the two of them together. But mantras can help you tap into a field of resonance that will align your brainwaves and your energetic systems with the energy of your intention. So different mantras have different intentions, and you can tune into that frequency, and saying them in that repetitive way, or even listening to them if you're not comfortable using the verbiage, can help you tune into that state and attract and allow more of that energy into your life.
Yeah, and I also work with crystals pretty heavily. I love them. I'm a feeler, so I love feeling the energy, and it's really funny. So when I was doing your Starship Saturn program, before I even got into it, I was looking around for crystals, and I picked up an amethyst Merkaba that I have, and brought it to the bed. Was like, okay, let's do this. And your design of this program really looks and felt like a Merkaba to me. So it was really funny that that was one of the things. So I would honestly say that using the Merkaba in meditation, you guys can look it up, how to do your meditations with the Merkaba. Activating that and using that as a meditation tool is going to be something that's really helpful. Yeah. And then also working with crystals can be really supportive too. You can use shapes of crystals, or you can use really anything you want. I like to work with a lot of black crystals as far as Saturn goes. For me personally, my favorites are black garnet. I have one of those with me today.
Beautiful. It looks almost like a little dodecahedron.
Right? Yeah, it's awesome.
I love the way garnet can grow that way naturally.
It's so cool. It's so magical. And also with black kyanite, I find black kyanite is something that works really well with my system. It's really good for cleansing, grounding, protection, all of which are Saturn related. And black kyanite is one that doesn't need to be cleansed very often. So a lot of people will recommend black tourmaline for people that are going through grief, loss, need a lot of protection, going through hard times, going through Saturn transits. But I find that is something that needs to be cleansed often because it pulls in constantly. And while all darker crystals do that, is the way that the energy and the light works, they're attracting and pulling in. I find that black kyanite has such a high frequency that it doesn't need to be cleansed nearly as often. So those are
that's really good advice. Yeah, because black, as we were saying, is a color that is associated with Saturn as a color that pulls in energy. And so working with any black crystals that call to you, even regular river stones, or if you're out on a walk and you see a dark stone, it doesn't have to be a specific type of crystal. It's really about what speaks to you. But the black and darker and denser stones tend to resonate a lot with Saturn energy. Hematite, you even said in your post, that's another great one. Hematite, you have to be careful with some elements of hematite because some are professionally magnetized, I would say, rather than acting in that regular, So there are different aspects, and never be ashamed to ask your crystal provider or crystal shop if they know where they got their materials from, and if they know if their materials were messed with or accentuated unnaturally. And that's really up to you. Unnatural doesn't mean bad necessarily. If it's something that is accessible to you or resonant with you, then that's fine. No judgment there. But some people find that if something has been added to mechanically or by means of heat or extra magnetization, eventually their system won't be as resonant with that because of the add-on. So that's a personal decision and how in touch you are with the energy, but hematite is a great stone when you can find natural magnetized hematite, and you'll be able to tell even if the crystal shop can't tell you, because it won't be as strong of a magnet with natural hematite. It may stick a little bit, but it's not going to be that pull like in elementary school when you're playing with magnets. It won't be that pull apart thing. So that's a good way to tell. Hematite is also a great one to work with Saturn if you are healing things physically, or if you have karma that has affected you physically, in my experience, because that magnet element as well as the crystal properties can help you to work with the iron in your bloodstream or work with any swelling or pain areas in the body. And something that's great also to ask yourself in meditation is, why am I feeling this pain? Where is this really coming from? Things like that. If you are struggling with something physical, a lot of people during Saturn returns have some element of health that can come up, or some lessons around health. So that's something to be aware of, and actually use Saturn returns or Saturn periods like we're in right now, a collective Saturn retrograde, to work on your karma or work through your lessons at sort of an expedited rate, because the energy wants to help you through it. So you can work on your karma throughout your entire life at any time that calls to you, but these times are points when there's just a little bit of extra incentive and help and momentum going in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always easier to work with the energies instead of against them, right?
Yeah.
So with all of the retrogrades that were happening right now and that will be happening over the course of the next few months, it's a very good time to pause, to sit in reflection, and to invite in the necessary changes that you may need to make, I think.
Yeah, I mean, retrograde is about that RE. So reflection is really key in times like that. Rest, regeneration, anything in the area of the planet that is retrograde that you feel like you didn't have a fair shot at in the past, or that you feel might have to be redone, or that could be done better with your knowledge and perspective that you have now that you maybe didn't have in prior times. Those are great things to accomplish during retrogrades. One thing I do like to say, and since we're talking about Saturn and rulership, is with any astrological event, and this is just for me and my clients personally, I like to recommend that we not get too attached to the meaning having to be a certain way. Just like in tarot, right? You can learn the meaning, but always be open to the possibility of it being something unique and different for you or for the client or for your life situation. Because if you are so heavily acclimated to what that thing is supposed to be, or what a certain reader or teacher or book or whatever says it is, then in essence you're giving part of your power away to that thing. You're giving your decision-making power away and just co-signing on whatever that generalized meaning is. Now, the generalized meaning can inform you, it can help you, it can empower you, it can show you what things will be easier perhaps to work on, but always know that you do have power to work, multidimensionally and outside of that space and time, and you don't have to be the cookie cutter version of what other people believe that time is meant to be.
Right, exactly. It's like I see it, I'm also an artist, so I see it in a visual way where it's like, you're given the background and then you are able to paint everything that you see in it. It's a very loose guideline and a touchstone to go to, and then you divine the meaning out of it. And
Yeah.
it doesn't have to mean the same thing every time, especially, you know, as far as reading, channeling, all of that goes. It's going to mean something different for each person because we're all individual, you know. You're getting the information for this specific thing and it's not always going to look the same way.
Right. And where to tell the difference between making your own decision or being resistant or defiant is where do you feel like you're pushing for it to mean something different instead of allowing for it to mean something different for you, and pick up on those subtle differences so that you can better navigate that period for you and manifest within it. There are certain times of the year or certain cycles of the moon or retrogrades that people don't like to manifest. Those are personal decisions as well, but every time can aid itself to different manifestations or different healings for you. And it's great to think of it in terms of, well, what am I pushing for, but it feels like maybe it's not happening because there's not enough of an opening yet. And what will I allow that's different? Like, okay, I take on that meaning, I see it, I observe that possible meaning for this time period, but also I would like to use it for this. And always be willing and encouraged and in your self-worth to set an intention as well if it's something that you want to work with. Even if that intention doesn't seem to quite fit with that area of your life, know that if it's coming through organically, you will have more power at your disposal to go in that direction.
Yeah, surrendering to the possibility, I think, is a beautiful and important practice for all of us, where sometimes we just need to get out of the way and let what needs to come in, come in. And I think sometimes that we're so gripping and so trying to control the outcome and control our lives out of fear that we don't leave room for the possibility for greater and bigger things to happen or for things to mean something else. So
definitely. I know for me, even when I had some health things that were like edema or swelling, I would start to notice I would go to bed in one state, and then when I would wake up, there would be a second before I would fully come into consciousness where I would notice I wasn't swollen the same in those areas. And not just because of resting, but because I hadn't reawakened that negative possibility from the day before that I was used to yet. So also be aware that everything you're continuing to create in your life, you're putting energy to, or it would not be continually created or allowed in your life and in your experience. So you have the power to assess and decide if you want to keep putting energy in those areas. And Saturn, as a hard teacher, can also show you where you may be wasting energy, where you may be putting energy kind of good after bad and adding more energy to things that will not be as replenishing to you or won't continue to have a stable foundation for your next phase of life.
Absolutely. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your Saturn?
Yes, I was going to ask. Thank you so much. So Avery brought up my Starship Saturn energy art program, and she is one of the users of that program, and I actually have a printout of that as well. So this is the energy that Avery was speaking about earlier in terms of looking a little bit like a Merkaba.
Yes.
And in this is a digital downloads program that is available on my website, which is www.damseldesigns.com. And you will see it on there. It's called Starship Saturn. This is an image that I channeled. This is actually a photograph of Saturn that my guides and I put through a mirror process and created this image that can act as a portal for you. I have it printed on regular computer paper here, so you'll get it as a digital download if you go to my website, and then you will receive a download copy of this image that you can print out, and it doesn't have to be on special paper. This is just regular computer paper, and you can use it for focal point manifestation, for focal point meditation. There is a journey work aspect, like Avery was speaking about journeying within the Merkaba system. There is an element within this program that will teach you how to actually do a form of journey work meditation to put yourself within the imagery and astrally journey to receive information or energy that may be helpful to you as you are working on or healing your relationship with Saturn, with time, with karma. And so many of those aspects, whether you're in a Saturn return or not, right now we are in a Saturn retrograde period, but this will be helpful whenever you are ready to work on the areas of your life or your natal chart that have to do with Saturn, time, or karma. And it comes with a video as well that will explain to you a little bit more about what energy art is, how this image came to be, and different tools and material about Saturn that will help you to utilize this. You can use it as a base with your crystal allies, like we were speaking about earlier, for crystal gridding, which is really fun. And you can also use it for manifestations, mandas, spells, candle work, a whole bunch of things. So would you like to share more of your experience that you have with the program?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So I think big fan of crystals, crystal grid, excellent. I think that is one of the best uses that I found for this beautiful piece.
Yeah.
I think it's really helpful for me to use and do grids when I'm working. I am now independently working. I'm working for myself. I'm trying to restart Cosmos. Took a little bit of a break. Needed a break.
Yeah.
And it's going to really, really help me channel the, I don't want to say bootstrapping because that's not the right energy, but focus and discipline is the energy. And as someone who's a little bit more easy, flowy going with life, and I'm someone that needed to heal my relationship with rest. I was in art school, and then immediately after that, I was in the service industry, so working in bars, restaurants, coffee shops. And that's a really, really, really intense environment. You have to be high performing at all times. There's not a lot of room for error. It's really intense. I don't know if anyone's watched The Bear, but The Bear is a very, very good representation of what it's actually like to work in the industry. So because I was going so hard for so long, I really was very burnt out by the time the pandemic rolled around. And I had already had experienced burnout before that, as I'm a firstborn. So being an eldest child was very intense. I also was a really big athlete. So I had already really kind of burnt out from that, and then went into the service industry. And by the time the pandemic rolled around, I was burnt out. So I had to learn how to heal my relationship with rest because I was just pushing instead, and really just ignoring my body and fighting and pushing. So now I have allowed myself to enjoy rest, relaxation, and flow. And maybe I've gone a little too far in that direction. So using this to do crystal gridding and candle magic is going to be really helpful to keep me focused and grounded while I'm working on building what comes next for Cosmos.
Yeah, that's amazing. And healing your relationship with rest is something that is really key for empaths and light workers and caregivers. You know, if you are a caregiver, whether that's industry-based or in your personal life or both, it can be hard to have worth or self-worth around rest. And it can be difficult to allow for rest without intention for that rest, other than enjoying the replenishment of it, because sometimes we'll allow ourselves periods of rest, but only when we reach the point where we need it or else.
Yeah.
And we assign intention or meaning to that rest, being, well, if I rest now, then I'll have the energy to do this and this and this and this and this. And then it's like we negate that entire period of rest because we feel like we have to make assignment to it to be worthy of it. And that is another aspect of healing, and in knowing that you are worthy of your rest or of your replenishment, regardless of what society or anyone else thinks or has taught you about that. I wouldn't even say that you've gone too far in the other direction. I would say you made up for some lost time, you know?
Yeah.
And there was a period where I did that as well. At the end of, I think it was the end of 2018, I was offline for a few months, and kind of just disappeared because I reached such a level of burnout that I just couldn't. And I couldn't, you reach those points until you come to the self-worth to get more comfortable with taking rest, taking periods of rest. And to be honest with you, you may never feel totally organic or totally okay taking rest and setting boundaries and telling people no because you need to rest, or not checking something off your to-do list because you need to rest. That's a personal thing, but I would say don't look for that feeling of complete okayness with or comfort about it. Just getting to the place where you allow it and can actually allow replenishment rather than having your body rest but have your mind continually cycling, you know, that's a unique and wonderful place to be. So I'm really excited and grateful that the program is helping you with that and will help you with that. And I look forward to candle work with this as well. That's something I love to do because I always be fire safe. You know, this is paper, you're putting it on paper, so be fire safe. But if you lay it flat, there are tons of little spots where you can put candles, as many as you want, that will help you to set intentions. Working with something like this is an energy elevator, and it will tune you in just the same way we were talking about mantras and mudras, tuning you into a particular frequency or particular intention. This will amp up your power and your intentions in different areas of life that Saturn can help with. And a lot of light workers, people who identify as light workers, can feel uneasy, in my experience, about working with Saturn because so much of the occult, which occult just means hidden, you know, hidden from public consumption, but so much of the traditionally known or thought of occult has assigned dark meaning to Saturn. And that's not to say that that doesn't happen. It does happen for some people, but remember, every planet, every portal day, every tool, you have the opportunity to set your own intention and your own path with. And in my opinion, Saturn was never meant to only be that dark experience that a lot of people assign it. It really is, like Avery was saying, to help you tap into discipline and grounding of things as well, which a lot of light workers, we miss that piece of being able to ground the airy, fairy, ethereal, wonderful information that we see and hear and pick up on. And if we don't ground it enough and integrate it with self-worth, with discipline, with action steps, and rest when necessary, while things are integrating, rest is really helpful. But if we don't put a mix, then it can be really difficult to bring our dreams and bring our lessons into actuality, into the physical manifested form. So working with something like this, which becomes physical or makes what we see in meditation have a physicalized aspect, can help act in your grounding, in my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that you said in the program that I just absolutely loved was you said that love it or hate it, Saturn's about bringing things into balance.
Yeah.
And that, I think, maybe is one of the greatest lessons that it has to offer us.
That's very true. And thank you so much for bringing up that part, because it really, it is. And it's also about, like you were speaking about, kind of sometimes in life we have those moments where a pendulum is swinging and we can go too far in one end or too far in the other end. It doesn't necessarily mean we're headed too far to come back to balanced center. It just means we've picked up momentum in one end of direction, and we need something to help us move back towards that balanced side. And karma is really about momentum. What?
The guides love what you're saying, because I have a little Saturn candle going and it just went. Did you hear it? I don't know if you
I don't think I did.
But it seriously just went. It was really
Amen. Cool. Listen to that part again. So go watch the replay if you're joining us live. But
They love
yeah, it's true. You know, you need something with that momentum to bring you back in the direction and to know how to handle that momentum in a more disciplined and empowered way rather than just riding the wave like a tidal wave and being kind of swept up wherever it wants to take you, knowing that your power can really steer that ship if you choose. If you don't choose to enact that power and that free will, then you're going to go in whatever direction it's taking you on, and it'll feel more like a tower moment, kind of an uncontrollable aspect of things crumbling sometimes, which can be scary. But if you choose to work with it and to set intentions and decide where you want to go, don't decide every step along the way. Try to refrain from deciding how something's going to be done, because if you attach too much to the how, you crowd out the opportunity for magic and the universe and positive things to bring in other opportunities that you may not be seeing right now. But if you decide where you want to be, where you want the end result to be, even if you don't know the specifics, if you know the feeling, even if that feeling's really foreign to you, focus on the end result and say, let's go here. And if you want to get specific with times or whatever, that can be a little bit more difficult, but it can be done for some people. And Saturn is a ruler of time, so that's a possibility. But put that assumption and that intention out there and ask for the ways that you can work in that direction.
Yeah, and I think something super interesting. I've been studying a lot of human design lately. That's one of the newer modalities that I'm getting into. And as far as human design goes, you can look up your chart, find information about it. But there are specific manifestors and non-specific manifestors. So if you have that information about yourself, you can look up your chart and be like, oh, I'm a specific manifestor. It does help me to get a little bit more detailed about what I want and where I'm going. Yeah. Whereas me, I'm a non-specific manifestor, so it's all about the feeling. Yeah. It's all about the feeling and then waiting for the delight of the universe to fill that space.
And healing also plays a large role in this, because if it's a feeling that's not very familiar to you or that you haven't been accustomed to in a long while, if you've had a lot of disappointment and where you want to go is a happier feeling, it's not something that's going to be easy for you to necessarily pick up on, cultivate, or even be comfortable with when it comes into being or tries to come into your reality. So this is where working with a coach or a healer, I'd also do quantum energy healing and coaching. So if you're interested in one of those spots, use the links and contact me. But whatever role of modality or healing comes up for you that better helps you to understand yourself, your perspectives, where they come from, can help you to get more in line with bringing your manifestations, specific or non-specific, into your reality, because you will be more receptive to them once you have healed the things that have been in your field which have made you not be receptive to having them in your life so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry, give me 1 second. I want to plug my phone in because it's dying. I'll be right back.
Okay, that's fine.
The live is
and that's fine. But when Avery comes back, I also want to speak about time, because healing my relationship with time has been something that was really a large part of healing my relationship with Saturn. One of the crystals Avery mentioned was black kyanite. That is a crystal that I've really assigned a lot of meaning to the goddess Kali. And in Hinduism, Shiva and Kali are more the gods and the rulers of time. And so that black kyanite energy really resonates a lot with Kali to me, and her aspect of being a dark feminine goddess, but also being a really strong protector and healer and mother of those children that see her as more than that dark and scary in appearance aspect. Kali is only scary to demons and to negative energies, but to those of us who are ready to embrace our shadow side and heal our shadow side, she can be really, really nurturing and protective and loving. And working with them in particular as well has helped me heal my relationship with time and with Saturn. So I was talking about how I worked with Lord Shiva and Kali, who I resonate with, the black kyanite energy, and how them being rulers of time as well really helped me to heal my relationship with Saturn and Saturn's rulership over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And big shout out to Mama Kali.
Yeah.
One of the her energy is one of my favorites to work with. As someone who's really soft, like I'm a Cancer. I have a Cancer stellium. I have a 12th house stellium in astrology. So I am very soft. I pick up so much. And Kali is someone who comes in and just really is a loving and protective force for me. She's like really a mama for me. And I tend to work with her energy and Ganesha. Those are the two that I really, really feel the strongest about. So I definitely recommend working with Kali.
Yeah.
Anyone.
Yeah, and see, I was just saying, to those who are not afraid to work with her, she really does step up to be such a motherly, nurturing figure, and she's only then scary to the demons or to the dark aspects that are not for us, you know, that we want cleansing or protection from.
Yeah, her creation and her job was to drive out the evil negative forces. So, and it feels so good. It's just the most protective, loving, motherly force to work with. It really is. Like, I can't even describe it, but it feels like being held, you know, just deeply, deeply held.
Yeah, and I think that being held also comes from the fact that when you take on that ability or that willingness to work with Kali, you have taken on recognition of your shadow side, and you start to work with appreciation for your shadow side. So in that wholeness, you really can feel being held, because you're not just asking to be held and honored for your light side, for your acceptable sides. You're really being held by all and for all of who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The truest form of yourself, warts and all, you know, because we're all multidimensional, multifaceted creatures, and Kali accepts all of that and loves it all and is here to work with you through all of that.
Yeah, and we're in a period right now known as the Kali Yuga. So in that time period in history, we are having a lot of scary things come up, because a lot of things come up that have been hidden beneath the surface. So this is where we have the scandals, the political and governmental scandals, things that were in the shadows of society that come up to be recognized and healed and expelled, so that when we enter the next yuga or phase of time, we can do so without carrying those things or the burdens or karmas of those things beneath the surface. So it's a big time to work with any energy that is similar to Kali. I'm a big proponent of these energies coming to Earth in many different phases and forms and names and faces, and they can come forward the same being, that same loving or protective or empowered energy under different names. So don't feel like you have to work with the deities that we share, that we work with. Matter of fact, I have an offering coming soon. It's going to be on the next episode of my podcast. I'm going to be discussing it, where we talk about, I know Avery's been such a supporter of my podcast.
It's incredible. If you haven't listened to the podcast, please stop what you're doing after this live. Go listen. You can do your dishes, you can listen, you can drive around, you can listen. It's incredible, and you have such a profound voice, and you are so knowledgeable, and just it's awesome. It's great.
Thank you. Yeah, I work the last month or so, things have been asking to take a little longer than the weekly uploads, because there's some new information that wants to be shared about working with deities and how we can carry templates and work with different templates in regards to deity and healing our personal life. So that's going to be the next episode and new offering that's coming. So the podcast is Chat and Channel Session, and you can find it linked on my website and in my bio. It's on YouTube and Spotify and a whole bunch of other places, depending on how you like to listen. But that's one of the things. You don't have to work with the deities that we share or that your favorite teachers share. Find the ones that really speak to you. And it doesn't matter the name or the pantheon or the place. It really is about if your energy feels loved and supported and held, like we're speaking about. And that's been one of the things that really, in my opinion, has been missing from the dogmatic or traditionally known and accepted religions, is it kind of removes that aspect of being held in a way where you are respected for your soul sovereignty as well, because a lot of the dogma asks you to remove your soul sovereignty and just totally worship, the being that they are presenting. Whereas in my experience, true deities want to see and respect and honor you for your soul sovereignty as well, and they will hold you the way we were speaking about, but never in a way that asks you to give up the sovereignty of who you are or the free will of who your soul is.
Yeah, that's a really important point. And I also want to add to one of the big things that Saturn has taught me is boundaries and grounding. So before you go and start doing channeling, doing meditations and stuff, I really recommend having a grounding practice, and then having also safety practices, like you mentioned in the program. Do you want to tell us one of your methods?
Yeah, so in the program, again, the Starship Saturn program that's on my website, it's like I said, it's a really comprehensive video that comes with it. So if you've never energy worked before, don't fear, because there's a lot of information in there. But one of the things that I speak about is the importance of grounding and protective and boundary practices, like Avery was saying. And people forget that even doing something like this, showing up online, you should have, in my opinion, different boundaries or filtration systems for energy for online as well as for in person. Because one of the things that I had to learn as a medium and as a channel was that I had the right and the worthiness to set boundaries even with spirit and not have to have them coming in and out of my experience all the time. And they were doing that and draining me for a large part of my life and career because they knew, right? Because they knew that we didn't have the boundaries. We didn't feel like we had the worth or the right to have boundaries. And a lot of times if you grow up in a family where boundaries are seen as wrong, or like you only have boundaries with outside people, then you can take on that meaning where, well, spirit is an inside person. Spirit is like family, so I must not be allowed to have boundaries with them. But that's not true. Even with deity, you are allowed to have boundaries. Even if deity is calling to you or asking you to channel something or create something, you are allowed to say, thank you, I appreciate you for showing up, but I need rest right now, or I need resources right now, or I need to eat right now. And know that that being is outside of space and time. They are not taking care of a body. They are not taking care of the other aspects of life. They will be able to wait and to respect you and your body and soul's needs, if it is a being of truth. And so you have the worth to set boundaries, to set intention, to make sure that spirit and energy is who they say they are. Because remember, anything coming to you in channeling, they are not in a body as we know it. They're not in an appearance as we know it. So they can change their image or call themselves whatever they like to work with you, but it's helpful, especially for newer channels, but really for everyone, to know that you have the right to make sure someone is who they say that they are, so that you're putting your energy into a good direction and a trustworthy direction. And there are different practices as an empath that you can do to set boundaries with light, You can ask for a filtration system that only good energy is allowed to come through into your bubble, into your environment, into the circle. Circle casting or circle setting is something that can be really helpful in any type of work, especially before you're going to read for someone else. Set an intention of light and a boundary of energy to say, and for you to decide and determine what is allowed within that space for and with you and what is not. And you can ask your protectors to help uphold that boundary, whoever you work with as a protector. And then the great thing about setting circle casting or boundaries is if you're doing magical workings or readings or healings, you can release that circle and release that energy when you're done and get back to yourself without having been drained or without having to keep those energies around in your environment. So that's really helpful if you're going to be doing any workings for anyone else, with consent and permission, of course, because you will not have to continue to feel and pick up on or carry their energy.
That's been another beautiful thing that Saturn's taught me is how to have boundaries, how to differentiate energies, because I'm a little sponge baby. I'm so sensitive. Yeah. And I also feel like too, growing up in a Christian background in late stage capitalism as a woman, we're really asked in that culture, in that setting, not to have boundaries. We're supposed to be of service. If we put ourselves first, we're selfish. There's a lot of shame and judgment in that is cast when you do that, when you do prioritize yourself and you do hold boundaries and set boundaries. And it's so critically important to do in our day-to-day life, but also energetically. I feel like that's one of the lost arts of teachings that we're really missing kind of right now, because as wonderful and amazing as the internet is, these esoteric traditions were taught shaman to shaman, person to person, witch to witch. So they had the information of protection and of boundaries and how to safely work with these energies. I'm personally not really working with mediumship right now because I'm still learning how to have healthy boundaries. And when I was working without healthy boundaries, without practices that supported my psychic and energetic and physical well-being, I was really doing a disservice to myself, and I was leaking energy and I was soaking up all the energy around me, and I had such a hard time differentiating what from what because I didn't have the healthy practices taught to me to be able to do this kind of work. So that's been one of the best teachers and the most amazing things, is learning how to have boundaries, how to ground, and how to protect myself in the day-to-day world and in the energetic and spiritual world.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you can also learn from experiences like that is just because you can do something with your gifts, with your abilities, doesn't necessarily mean that you should be doing it, or especially that you have to be doing it. Because sometimes we feel like just because we have a gift or an ability to be able to do something, that we take on this obligation to do that and to do it all the time, or to do it without first thinking about what we need in order to do it. And that's something that Saturn will teach you as well, to really heal your self-worth and to more fearlessly kind of set your own price. Now, that price can be monetary or that can be something else, but to have the courage to set your own price for the exchange of whatever it is that you are doing. Not everyone needs an exchange, because you may be doing something where you've already received, and you doing something is the give back and is the exchange. But energy work especially, we need to more fearlessly, in my opinion, state our price and stake our claim and know that everyone has the right to do that. We don't all have to agree with what that price is. Not everyone has to agree with that, but that just means it's not for them. And it's for us to figure out what feels good, what actually replenishes us. If we want to use our abilities in that direction, or if we want to take that mediumship and use it for something else. I always say mediumship is more than spirits. It's about being a medium between any two energies or any two frequencies. So you can use that to speak to loved ones in spirit, or to spirit guides, or to fae, or anything, deities, whatever it is that more speaks to and refuels and replenishes your soul and your passions.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
So I know we've been on for about an hour. If anyone is here that has any questions before we go, feel free to ask in the comments. But I did want to touch on before we go a little bit about Venus retrograde as well.
Yes.
And so
the nodes.
Yes. So Neptune, Pluto, there are so many planets. We're about to head into a Mercury retrograde. If you are watching this close to the time of upload. If not, feel free to take all the other jewels of information that we shared, which are timeless. But as of now, we are headed into this period where so many of the planets are about to be retrograde. In my opinion, it's to learn the ways that those types of energies can integrate and work together and act as kind of multi-layered lessons. And I've been particularly called to how Saturn and Venus retrograde are going to be working together. So is there anything that you would like to share about Venus retrograde?
Yeah, I do. And I just want to preface this by saying as well, we're about to go through so many retrogrades. How many planets are going to be retrograde? 5, 6?
I think 6. Yeah, 6 or 7, including Chiron. Yeah.
Yeah, including Chiron. So this is of my opinion, but the modern world moves so fast. The world that we're living in everything's instant. And because the information and experience is so varied and spreading so quickly, I think that this retrograde period is a big time of integration. Like, we just went through COVID. We just went through all of this massive transition, crises, pain, loss, suffering, sorrow. And this is a time where we are able to process these things, because if the planets are constantly always go, 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 there's no time to integrate the experiences that we had. So I think this is a time of integration. So whatever is coming up for you at this time, be gentle, give yourself grace, allow the information to come to you. And if you need rest, take rest. You don't always have to be pushing and grinding. Like, that's not always the answer. And for me, that's not the answer at all right now. The answer for me right now is I'm a manifester in human design, and I'm just loving all of that, because it's so true, and it's such a permission slip to me to say, I'm not feeling that. I'm not passionate about that right now. Forward motion does not feel like true to me right now. So I'm going to sit and I'm going to receive, and I'm going to wait to act until I feel when I feel like I'm on fire, honestly. And once I have those downloads, I am 2000%. But when I'm not, I need to rest. So if you find that coming up for you, honor that, work with that. That is true and beautiful, even in the world that we're living in. The world that we're living in may not support that, may not understand that experience that you're having, but know what's true to you and honor that experience. So yeah, with Venus and Chiron, definitely dealing with some family wounds. We lost my cat tragically. As soon as it was Venus went retrograde, Chiron went retrograde, the minute the nodes changed. The North Node changed from Aries, the South Node is now in Libra. So she passed, sadly. And what was really interesting, I'm not very familiar with casting death charts in astrology. There's not a lot of information about it out there. But I looked it up because I was curious, and Aries was rising when the moment that she passed. So I thought that was really interesting, that the nodes changed and she was in alignment with that somehow. Yeah. So for me, dealing with grief, pain, loss, honoring all of that, and then Chiron, the wounded healer, is also in Aries right now. So I think my experience too is working on, not working on necessarily, but kind of recognizing and giving myself grace for what comes up with my authority as far as wounding goes, me showing up in the world. I've been away. I've been hiding out in my little 12th house, in my little sanctuary. but I feel it. I feel the call to come back and show up, I guess.
Yeah, and thank you so much for coming back and showing up with me. I'm so
Thank
glad
you.
that it worked out for you to be here. I really love Avery's work. She has beautiful work and information that she shares. So if and whenever she is ready to, when she is ready to share more of her offerings, please do follow her and keep up with her. I believe you do still have some things up in your shop, right? Potions? Not right now. Okay, so
Yeah.
just stay tuned at Cosmos and Company, mostly on Instagram, right? To get in touch with
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
On Instagram right now, working on getting my website and my offerings back up. Funny thing with retrogrades, I didn't read the fine print of something and I created a new domain, and it was very deceptive as far as the contract goes, so I had to wait 60 days for them to release my domain.
There you go. But you know what? I read that Yoko Ono loved to actually do contracts during
Cool.
retrogrades, particularly Mercury retrograde, because she set the intention that if there was anything in that contract that would better serve her at a later time, she would have the opportunity to redo it in that way.
Cool.
So if you have to do contracts, or if you're called to create something that requires a contract, you can work on changing the belief system about having to go over something again because it's retrograde, and change it to, I may not have to go over something because there's a problem. What if I have to go over something again, it's because there's an added bonus or added opportunity that can come to me. So I always like to share that because we're coming up on Mercury retrograde as well. So contracts and communication and all of that can come into play. And I do see a question that I want to get to, but
yes.
Definitely have the freedom and the courage to set your own intentions about things, and always leave room for the possibility that there's a positive redo as well, rather than the constant concentration on the negative possibility of redo.
Yeah, and I just want to add to, as far as the Venus retrograde too goes, grief and loss and sorrow is just the evidence of love, right?
Yeah.
That's really what it is. So if you're experiencing that, or if you're experiencing loss, job loss, moving, loss of friendships, anything like that that comes up, it's just creating space for new and beautiful things to enter your life. You know, it's all about perspective. Things, I don't know, I don't believe in that there's malefic forces always trying to, you know, take from us and everything's bad. No, it's always a detour in the right direction. Everything in life, if you're getting a no, it's leaving space for something better to come along. So just everyone.
Yeah. And change your perspective and know that your energy itself and your beliefs can protect you. Mm-hmm. You know, things can only really get at you if you're going to give it permission on some level to get at you. Yeah. So explore what those permissions and what those beliefs are, and that will help you to feel more protected. If you're constantly looking to set really heavy-duty boundaries and protections, something that a fellow healer, Marcus at Starseed Light Codes, who some of you might have heard me speak about, I love him, he reminds me from time to time that if you are constantly seeking to protect or set really heavy-duty boundaries rather than the filtration like we talked about, you are setting an intention of asking the universe to provide things for you to use those heavy-duty boundaries for, and asking the universe to send you more to be protected from. So have the courage to step out of that. It can feel really scary sometimes, but to step out of that box and say, well, I'm going to ask for my energy to protect me, without needing to set so many layers of boundaries or protection. Because we have a question about trauma. When you have been through trauma, when you learn about the empowering things that you can do to heal or cleanse or protect, sometimes, and I have been guilty of this, we have a tendency to overprotect or over boundary. We become really rigid, and then we block the good things as well.
Right, and if we're protecting so hardcore and we're just really shielding up and armoring up, where the energetics of that invites something to fight our armor.
Yeah.
It does. The energetics say, I am attracting this experience, versus saying I have, versus the filtration of being like, okay, this is what I want to allow in, versus needing to shield everything out. And not to say that it isn't extremely important to have healthy boundaries and protection. It's just to say that if we're gripping and clenching and clinging, that's the energy of that. It's rigid, it's scared, it's small, so the nature of the universe is gonna honor that and recognize that and be like, yeah, keep that down, keep that in. We're gonna keep testing that. So opening and relaxing is the posture. Versus
and Venus can help with that, because Venus is the divine feminine planet and is about being open and receptive and passionate. And in a Venus retrograde, that also lends itself well to the question that we have. But my perspective on Venus retrograde is it can be a heartbreaking time, because Venus does rule the heart. For some people, depending on where you're at in life, especially now on top of a Saturn retrograde, which Saturn ruling karma, if you have a lot of relationships or prevalent relationships, innumerable in your life, that are based on karma, Venus retrograde can, in this period especially, lend itself to re-examining those and to seeing whether it's actually a relationship that has run its course, or a relationship that wants to be continued with a different foundation other than karma. So people can get afraid of this, but there can be breakups that happen or are at least brought into question during a Venus retrograde. I know that happened to me. A lot of people in the divine love communities, however, whatever terms they use, but people who know or believe their souls to have brought them together in love for a very particular reason, those relationships in particular can be very vulnerable to Venus retrograde, in my experience, because so much of it is based in divine lesson learning, and the planets like to play with that. And so in a Venus retrograde, it is about re-examining your relationship with receiving, re-examining your relationship with love, with sexuality, with desire, with money as well, because Venus has a large part to do with money. It can also be a blessing in terms of if you've done a lot of disciplined work with Saturn or in any aspect of your own, but you haven't been receptive to receive the benefits for that work, Venus retrograde can be helping you to finally receive the funds that you have already put in the work for. One thing that came up for me this Venus retrograde was a reminder that it may not be the best time to change something in terms of your appearance. So haircuts or big appearance changes. Yeah. Don't give in and get bangs, because it's not the time to make it.
If you want to get bangs, sleep on it.
My throat chakra was just like, yeah, no. But don't change, perms, straightenings, anything really, really big or drastic of your appearance. Wait until after Venus retrograde, because that would better lend itself. Whatever you're doing may look really, really different on the other side of Venus retrograde and may want to be done again in a different way. So instead, if you have the cue or the desire to change something about your appearance during Venus retrograde, write it down, map it out, and live with it in your head for a little while before you actually change it in the physical. Otherwise, you may have to change it again. But I want to get to our question that we have from Tessa Clark. She says, what about healing sexual trauma? So that's obviously a really big one, and one that may also require you to get some professional medical treatment. Neither Avery or myself are medically accredited, and we never say that we should substitute for that. I believe it's really important to come at things from a holistic point of view and to get whatever help you need medically and in that accredited way, as well as with the perspective and support that spirituality can aid you with. I am an energy healer as well, but I do highly recommend both, and I always see that energy healing makes you
more receptive to the realities of any healing that your doctors would do, or perhaps gives you insight or information on what to ask for or what to allow that would really get you to your goals. So I believe those things go hand in hand. Healing from sexual trauma can be easier during the, not that it's ever easy, but it can be easier during this time of Venus retrograde in my experience, because Venus in retrograde allows for that reflection, allows for that replenishment, allows for that re-examination. And so sexual trauma, even if it was not obviously done in love, it was done in a sexual way, which Venus does rule over. She loves to rule over desire and love first and foremost, but sexuality she does rule over as well. Obviously, we like when those things can go hand in hand, love and sexuality, but depending on where you are in life or the things you've experienced, they don't always, and especially with trauma, they don't. But people can experience sexual trauma not only in an intrusive way from a stranger, but sometimes, unfortunately, people can experience sexual trauma from someone that they do love. So especially in circumstances like that, disentangling the love from the trauma, Venus can really step in. I'm also feeling Inanna come through very strongly. Inanna is a Sumerian goddess that Venus was largely based on as well. I've taken a lot of, as a shamanic practitioner, Spirit has had me undergo many initiations, shall we say, and underground journeys. So I went through a Duat journey with my Egyptian pantheon and that connection. And with Inanna, she takes us on an underworld journey sometimes because of her journey that she had in her mythology, which you may be called to look up. But she is one that is that divine feminine aspect of love and sexuality, but was not afraid to go underneath into the underground, into the depths. And that is where sexual trauma healing will take you, because you need to be able to look at those roots from that underground perspective and disentangle what happened to you from any sort of connection with the definition of who you are or who you want to be, you know, because those things can get really intertwined within your body and within your soul and within your makeup. I would say whether it's Inanna or some other divine feminine goddess who has experience with light and dark aspects, look for a patron to work with for your sexual trauma healing. Sekhmet can be another great one. I do Sekhem energy healing, and she's very fiery. She's the goddess of war and of healing, but having a patron who will be with you as a divine feminine aspect, who will be an ally, who has the capacity for the light side and the dark side of life, that will be really important, because you will get to feel more safe and protected as you are looking at and as you are examining those things that the sexual trauma has brought up within you. And please, if you can, if you're in a position to, get help, whether that is from a licensed medical professional or a healer or a coach like myself, or preferably both, and take care of your body and your spirit and your mentality, however those things call, because it's all going to be really intertwined, and trying to do it all yourself, no matter how gifted you are, can be a really murky and sometimes dangerous place to be. So having someone hold space with you in a trustworthy way, or preferably a team of people, physically and energetically, in my opinion, is the best way to go about that type of healing.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say, I'm really sorry that you went through that. That's really unfair and really awful. Some resources that helped me are somatic therapy, working in the body, massage therapy. Extremely, extremely important for me. I hold so much in my body. I bring the energy in usually, and I'm constantly feeling other people's energy. And I've had events that were really traumatic, and that's where it lives. It lives in the body. So some books that I would recommend: The Body Keeps the Score. Happy Days by Gabby Bernstein is a story, her most recent book that she put out. That's about her experience with sexual trauma and her healing journey through that. So that's a really good resource. What else? Obviously working with anyone that can help you spiritually. Kali, that's who I work with. That's who helped me. That's who continues to help me with this. And then, yeah, getting energy work and energy readings, I think, will be helpful. And you can use those in conjunction if you're able to access medical care. You can use people like mediums to help you to give better information to doctors if that's what you choose. Working in tandem with those two things is going to be really helpful. Working with crystals is also really helpful, I find. Anything else? No, that's pretty much it. Oh, also, shaking practice is something that really helps me.
Right.
There are videos online that you can find, but it's one of the most amazing, empowering things, I think, doing a shaking practice.
Yeah, those are amazing resources. Thank you so much for sharing those. A medical resource, if you're looking for it, that I would recommend is EMDR. That could be really helpful. I would not recommend doing that yourself, even though there is information online how to do that. But if you are looking for a practitioner medically to work with, that's something that you can ask about. Shaking practice is great because it helps to unlock that nervous system. What else? There is information out there about different books. I would say look at different books from Peter Levine as well in terms of trauma, because sometimes the body keeps the score. Some people have told me is a hard one to start with first. Yeah. So look at
someone that I really
So look at some different ones. I would say also soul retrieval is something that can be really, really integral if you're a spiritual person in terms of sexual healing. So soul retrieval is something that I do. I know you mentioned it in one of your posts as well, right? You've had experience in soul retrieval. Yeah, so soul retrieval is where, especially in trauma events, we have these fractals of our soul that can separate, or I have found as a practitioner become compartmentalized within. Yeah. So it's not always that they go to a separate area or distant location. It can be a closed area within our bodies or souls or hearts. And I have other information on this on different episodes of my podcast, but when we go through such trauma, sometimes we squeeze out a part of our soul to separate and protect it. And so when you're going through that work of unlocking those doors that you've locked up because of sexual trauma or any type of trauma, sometimes it's helpful to work with a practitioner who's experienced in soul retrieval to bring that energy back into yourself, because that allows you to really heal and be whole in that aspect again, rather than leaving it as a vacant space, because vacant space in the body or anywhere wants to be filled with something. So once you clear the trauma out, you always want to put a positive intention, whether it's light or that aspect of your soul, back in those locations. And if you're looking with after the body keeps the score, different aspects of how your body can speak to where you carry your trauma or your pain, there's also a good book called Soul Speak by Julia Cannon, who is Dolores Cannon's daughter. And yeah, there's a large resource in that book about where different elements of the body link to in terms of if you're having body symptoms, whether you know that's from sexual trauma or not, could be from anything energetically, and linking that to different things that you can work on in terms of mentality or belief systems, etc. Because when you come at something from your mentality or your beliefs and heal in that aspect, you leave a large opening for the physical to be healed as well, or for the right resources or people or teachers to find you so that you can really have that healing.
Yeah, and if you have any further questions, Tessa, about that, feel free to reach out to us.
Yes.
We have resources, we have community and friends, and a lot of us have been through this. So feel free to reach out. And if you have any further questions while we're here, also feel free to ask.
Yeah. And I would say also inner child work, because whether the abuse happened in your childhood or not, our inner children really take things of that nature to heart, and healing the aspect that was hurt or the time period that we were hurt on is one thing, but also loving on and healing and protecting our inner children can help us to feel safe again, and especially in Venus retrograde can help us to look for ways to allow ourselves to be loved in a safe way.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to make a note that I learned recently. Tori who was my partner in Cosmos, she is a Reiki master. There's a lot that she does, but one of the things that she was noticing about some of the somatic healing is that some of the practitioners are really hardcore and really intense, and are forcing and pulling and taking. So if you find yourself doing some somatic therapy and somatic healing, gentleness is the path. We want to keep your aura and all of that in good health and care, and that's not going to come from someone trying to force something out of you. So if you find that you're pushing or forcing, as far as like trying to heal goes, gentleness is the way. Like, we want gentle, loving, supportive energy. So if you find that you're coming across the opposite energy, maybe that's not the path. That's all I'll say about it.
That's a really important point. And also, even if you're working with someone and they're feeling like they're pushing, please speak up. Please tell them, because sometimes they're so focused on what they're doing, they're not necessarily checking on, although hopefully they are, but not always are they able to check on your receptivity, and sometimes it's got to be your place, just as you have to be your own advocate in the medical spectrum. In the energetic spectrum, even if you have paid for something, even if someone is actively working on you and you trust their experience and opinion, please speak up so that you play a part in your own healing. Not every practice is for everyone, and that's a really important point, to not force something. It's also why I, as an energy healer, I stopped doing energy healing sessions on an individual basis a couple of years ago, because my guides and I did not find it healthy or helpful to the person to transform energy in such a big way and to shift so much energy within a person or their life and then be gone after that was done. So the way that I do it now, and to each their own, is that I create these packages over a period of weeks, however long is relevant for that client. And we have periods where we're reading, where we're healing, where we're integrating, so that all of that gets to be fully accepted in that kind of gentle way. And nothing is forced or jammed into a period of time. I find that more helpful. I akin it to surgery. You wouldn't go get a surgery and then never be checked again. You need to be checked. They need to take the sutures out. You need to tell the doctor how you're feeling and work with the new things that are happening in your body the same way you have to do in your soul, in my opinion. So see about working with different people and never be afraid to ask questions. The worst someone can say to you is that they don't have an answer for you. So please ask as many questions as you need to in your healing journey.
Yeah, and also too, if you don't feel safe speaking up because of the trauma that you experience, that makes sense. Leave. Just walk away. You don't even have to say anything. You can just disengage from the situation, remove yourself. And a lot of the time that'll be true with trauma, is that you don't feel safe speaking up. You don't feel okay to use your voice. You feel in danger when you do. So just get out of there. Remove yourself however you got to from the situation.
Yeah, and if you're working with someone energetically, share that with them before they start any sort of practice or energy healing, because you can set up a signal. If you know that it's difficult for you to speak up or stop a situation, whether it's remote work or in person, share with the practitioner. If I feel uncomfortable, what can we decide on before we get started that will just stop the process and take a break, and then have them agree to that. And it may not be something that they've done or experienced before, but you saying that can help them implement a practice that will help others as well. So please don't be afraid to make agreements like that to keep yourself safe. And just to be honest, you're not going to feel safe in every aspect of healing because you're going into uncomfortable areas, but you will start to notice the slight differences between unsafety because something is not right for you, or unsafety because it's uncomfortable just because you've lived with the pain for so long that it's actually uncomfortable to go towards the healthier aspect. There's a little bit of a difference in that level of energy. And feeling panic or feeling fear is not always necessarily a sign to not go through with something. Sometimes it's a sign of that trauma, of that stuckness in the body, just because we haven't been used to feeling safe or regulated in such a long time, that when we start to take steps, we may exacerbate that a little. That's why it's so important to have an open communication and dialogue with your practitioners or your doctors or whoever you're working with, so that they can also help you tell the difference.
Yeah. 100%.
All right, so does anyone have any other questions for us before we wrap up for today? You can let us know in the comments. Is there anything that you wanted to say before we end today, Avery?
Well, oh yeah, there is. Okay, so thank you so much for being a friend and for reaching your hand out to me and saying, hey girl, come back to the world. And being a supportive force for me. I really, like, from the bottom of my heart, I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. You're so welcome. I, to be honest with you, I know how that feels. And I didn't have someone to do that for me. And I just saw in you this light that's like, hey, we want to shine again. We want to sparkle again. And I knew that if you wanted to and if you were open, we could make some really cool magic together, and I think we did today. And so I'm so happy that you accepted and we're ready and willing to be here.
Yeah, we'll have to do this again. Hopefully on a regular basis.
Yeah. And next time we can do more of an open format. We both wanted to do something very informative today so that it can continue to speak to you. I'm actually going to see about re-uploading this to my YouTube channel as well, because sometimes on Instagram things can get buried, but it will be on replay here on Instagram. And feel free, we went over so many timeless points today, so go back and listen as much as you need and pick up on that divine knowledge energy from each of us. Be sure to follow Avery at Cosmos and Company to keep up for her new website when it comes and her new offerings. If you would like to work with the Saturn program that we mentioned, that is on my website. This is the image that you will see. It's called Starship Saturn, and it's on my website, damseldesigns.com. You will be able to work with that instantly. It's a digital download. And if you would like to tap in with more spiritual support, I have different types of reading sessions that I offer. So you can tap in with a quantum session where we work with your quantum field, your loved ones in spirit, your spirit guides, and get you the answers that you need. I also offer Akashic Records readings and several other types of sessions that you'll find on my website. If you are ready to go even further into that energy healing or into that shamanic soul retrieval like we were speaking about, you can use the application form linked on my website, damseldesigns.com, and we will see about building you a custom package. And stay tuned to my podcast as well, chat and channel session, for the next episode and deep dive on the backlog in my YouTube channel has the biggest backlog of the podcast sessions. They're all timeless material. If you have had a difficult relationship with time, as we were speaking about today with Saturn, there is an episode in the backlog about procrastination that I was just reminded of that may help some of you. So go and check that one out if that's been an issue for you in life. And we will see you next time. Let us know in the replay, in the comments, what you would like to hear us speak on next, or maybe next time we can do live readings for people.
Yeah. You know what? I want to pull a card before we go.
Okay.
For supportive energy.
Yes.
Some supportive energy for all of us here for the rest of the week. Or maybe what the retrogrades are here for us to do. All right.
I have a healing card as well after you.
Yay! I meant to bring oracle cards, but I was like, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of information, and Saturn is like, I like knowledge and discipline, so.
Saturn's like, calm it with the Jupiter energy, queen. And I'm like, all the things. And we're focused.
I know. I love Jupiter. Thursdays are like, I love Thursdays because Jupiter, and it's all the things.
My dog's name is Thor for a reason. You know?
Yeah.
He's a big Jupiter boy. And he's also a Scorpio, so he's the best. Alright. Ooh, we have the Knight of Pentacles.
There you go.
That I think is such a good card for us to remember throughout this retrograde period. Slow and steady wins the race. Put in the time, put in the work. Knights in the tarot are very charge forth energy, but the Knight of Pentacles is grounded. The Knight of Pentacles moves with intention. So yeah, I think that's really perfect for us to remember. I'm gonna show it one more time. This is who
That's
is
beautiful.
us.
And Pentacles energy, tapping into Venus, and funds, if anyone is looking to refuel that. So that's a great card to get right now.
Yeah.
I have my Wands of Horus cards from my friend, actually, Starseed Light Codes. So he makes, they're not available for purchase yet, but you can go and visit the website linked in his bio. I will link it in the replay comments for when those become publicly available. But he's been letting me test them. He sent them to me from Africa, and they're amazing cards. Yeah, so he has light codes in there, and they're cards made out of organite and hieroglyphs. And the card that we got, because they're energy senders too, is the Sakem. So that's perfect. So the Sakem is a symbol of Sekhmet, is a symbol of power, is a symbol of healing and strength. And actually, I don't do Reiki because I was initiated in Sakem. And I always wanted to be initiated in Reiki, but something always pulled me back, because if I had been initiated in the receive of that energy, I wouldn't have gone to my true calling of the Sakem, or that Sekhmet, ancient Egyptian form of energy healing that actually predates a little bit. So this can speak to anyone's sense of needing to revive in these retrogrades, their sense of personal power. If you are healing from trauma like we were talking about, that's a big one. This can also speak to empowering healthy boundaries rather than rigid or strict or lax boundaries. It can speak to your strength in yourself, in love, whatever it is speaking to you in terms of your personal power. I hope that you will think of this image. I also use a version of the Sakem in my logo. It's a great symbol to heal and to also know more of your worth. And you need to know your worth in order to receive your manifestations and in order to create the things that only you can create in this world, whether they are physical and tangible things or feelings or lessons in other people. Whatever you're creating is important.
Mm-hmm. And it reminds me too, just seeing that image, the message was, fill your cup. Do what fills your cup. Fill your cup first. Take care of you. That's
don't get afraid to ask for and to do that. Actually, before we go, one of the big people that is associated with Saturn now in the popular spectrum, in my opinion, is Adele. And she did that big
Queen. Yeah,
she did that big Saturn based or themed concert, right? Last year, I think it was.
Gosh.
And she set a price record, which a lot of people had judgment about. I had a little bit of judgment, not going to lie, about the prices that she set for her most recent concert. And it didn't work at first. She had to cancel it at first.
Right, yeah.
But then it got to work. So that can be a lesson when you are stepping forward to fill your cup, to set your boundaries, to set your prices, to set your intentions, whatever that is for you. It may not work the way you think right away, but if you stand true in that and do the healing work necessary to be receptive to that thing or those things that you are asking for, it will get to work eventually. And she's a great example. And as a famous person, I believe those who allow fame in their life experience, they also lend themselves to be something of an archetype. Mm-hmm. And her becoming very, very familiar with Saturn, which she didn't hide, she put it in some aspects of her album and her shows and things. When she first stepped to set that new price, that new higher tier for herself and for her, not customers, but, listeners, it didn't work right away. That fell apart. It got broken up. And then it came back together in a better way and in a more enthusiastic way. Everyone who went to that show made it. There's tons of clips and stuff online. If you are a music person, go look at that and see how it feels to learn from someone of that caliber, of that traditionally accepted success level, and see how that would fit for you and what you want and need to do in your life.
Yeah, her latest album is a perfect, beautiful love letter to her Saturn return. Like, it's awesome. Highly recommend it. Also, Adele is a manifester. I'm a manifester. Sometimes we need to go in a direction and let the things happen, right? So she says, this is the direction that I want to go in. I charge forth with my authority. This is where I'm going.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to look like the final picture. I just have to go in that direction and everything will fall into place. And also, she's someone who had her Saturn return in her 7th house. She went through a horrible divorce and breakup. Like,
yeah.
That's an example of Saturn in your 7th house. Dealing with hard things in relationships. And
Avery has a great post. It's in her stories right now of what house Saturn is in and the lessons that it can resonate for you. So go and check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Well, thank you so much for the beautiful energy today. Thank you, everyone who has been here joining us live and adding extra energy. And to those of you who enjoy this on the replay, be sure to like it and save it and recommend it to anyone who may be struggling with or exploring the empowerment of Saturn. So I hope you guys join us next time. And thank you, Avery. You know where to find us if and when you want to work with us. And we will see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.